On Wednesday this week, I saw a drawing, now widely shared on social media, of a woman standing next to a young girl with her arm around the girl's shoulders. The girl asked, "But what if they lose?" And the woman responded, "Then we should keep fighting for the rights of all people." "And if they win?" she asked. "Oh, dear girl, it's the same answer." This is why a few weeks ago, when I was choosing what to preach on this day, not knowing what situation we would be in, what the election outcomes would be, I settled on the title, Keep On. No matter who wins or loses, we must keep on. While my heart certainly holds some cynicism, fear, and sadness about the state of things, it is also filled with a fervent resolve. A resolve that is rooted in my faith as a Unitarian Universalist, in the inherent goodness of all people, and in a vision of beloved community that remains a guiding star. We must keep on going. We must, as the song says, keep on keeping on. So what inspires you to keep going on during hard times? Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking just about the election. We all face hard times in our lives, encounter obstacles and setbacks, or struggle at times to sustain hope. We need something that fuels us and keeps us moving forward day to day, year to year toward our dreams. Whether that dream is learning to ride a bike, or to graduate college, or to run a marathon, or to transform a calling into a meaningful career, to see policies enacted that promote the rights of all, or to be part of significant shifts in the cascading climate crisis. When we're in the thick of it, those dreams can seem so very far away. When searching for inspiration, though, you can almost always find a story in our Unitarian Universalist heritage that speaks to this moment, in which the players were asking questions similar to those that we ask today. One of those players that I return to again and again is Olympia Brown. Born in the 1830s, she grew up in a family that valued education and ensured that she had opportunities that few women of her time could access. She went to college, and at college, she encountered sexism at every turn. A chemistry professor told her that she wasn't expected to remember everything she was taught, only enough to hold intelligent conversation. Male students were expected to memorize their speeches, and female students weren't, but that did not stop her from doing so. She felt called to ministry, but in the 1800s, women were not encouraged to follow this path. One seminary that she applied to said that it was too much of an experiment to let women in. The president of the seminary at St. Lawrence University said that he didn't think that women should be ministers, but that he would leave that between her and the great head of the church, meaning God. So, of course, Olympia said, "Great, I'm meant to be a minister." So she showed up at St. Lawrence to the surprise of the administration. They had not expected her to come. She graduated, and in 1863 was ordained by the Universalist Church. She was the first woman to achieve full ministerial standing recognized by a denomination in the United States. She took on struggling churches, what some referred to as comatose churches, and breathed life back into them. She hosted prominent female speakers, and women of her congregation voted and took on leadership roles. It was at this time that she joined efforts for women's suffrage. And as she traveled around from speaking engagement to speaking engagement, people cursed and spit and threw things at her when she spoke. But she also encountered large supportive audiences. Her fierce and inflexible approach was offensive to some, and she alienated many colleagues and friends over the years due to her sometimes unpopular stands. But she persisted until her dream of women's voting rights became a reality. Stubborn and resilient and steadfastly committed to her Universalist faith, Olympia Brown's life, ministry, and activism has had a lasting impact on Unitarian Universalism and on the United States as a whole. It was faith in herself, in other people, in her nation, and in the great head of the church that kept her going. She was one of the only women involved in the early years of the women's suffrage movement who lived to vote in 1920. She finally tasted the fruit of her efforts. But not everyone will taste this sweet fruit, though. Theodore Parker, born in 1810, was a Unitarian minister and part of the Transcendentalist movement. In 1841, Parker preached a sermon called A Discourse on the Transient and Permanent in Christianity, in which he said that the religion that Jesus taught, love of God and of neighbor, remained permanent, but that the theologies, doctrines, traditions, and all the trappings of church were merely transient. He challenged the purpose of the church. And so, as you can imagine, other Unitarian clergy were a bit unhappy. His colleagues got together and they fretted about what to do. They spent meetings going in circles asking, what are we going to do? Parker's words were an affront to their calling and their livelihood. They asked him to withdraw from ministerial fellowship, but he declined. In the words of the historian Conrad Wright, there was no way to exclude him without abandoning the principle of free inquiry. So several members said kind things about Parker's sincerity. He burst into tears and left the room, where a colleague shook him cordially by the hand and expressed the hope that he would come to see him soon. Parker's colleagues essentially tried to excommunicate him for his views, and thank goodness they didn't, and that's not possible within Unitarianism, because Parker and his Transcendentalist colleagues went on to transform our movement in ways that still reverberate today. After this, Parker went on to lead the 28th Congregational Society of Boston, which with 2,000 Sunday attendees could be considered the first Unitarian megachurch. He was a staunch advocate for the abolition of slavery and was even part of the Secret Six who funded John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. Parker kept a gun in the pulpit while preaching to protect the fugitive slaves in his congregation. He was radical for his time. In 1853, Parker gave a sermon in which he said these famous words, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but a little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience, and from what I see, I am sure it bends toward justice." More than 100 years later, Martin Luther King Jr. echoed Parker's words, saying, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." These words are, I think, a critical part of how Parker found the inspiration to keep on going. His conscience and his faith told him that all people, including enslaved people, have worth and dignity and are deserving of rights. His conscience and his faith told him that the work that he was doing was making a difference. It was bending the arc of the moral universe toward justice, even though he couldn't see the end of that arc. Unlike Olympia Brown, Theodore Parker did not live to see his dreams become reality. He died at the age of 49 before the abolition of slavery in the United States. But he fought until the end for, in his words, a government of all the people, by all the people, and for all the people. And while progress has been made, we are still fighting for this today, right? The arc is very long. But knowing that the arc is long is what helps me keep on. No dream worth dreaming and no truly meaningful goal comes to fruition easily. But it will never come to fruition if we hopelessly abandon it. Václav Havel, whose human rights work landed him in prison, but who later went on to be the president of Czechoslovakia and then the Czech Republic, spoke about hope in an interview. He said this, Hope is not the same as joy that things are going well, or willingness to invest in enterprises that are obviously headed for early success, but rather an ability to work for something because it is good, not just because it stands a chance to succeed. The more unpromising the situation in which we demonstrate hope, the deeper that hope is. Hope is not the same thing as optimism, he said. It is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. Václav Havel and Theodore Parker, 100 years before him, held on to the faith that there is something beyond the horizon, beyond what we can see and understand, which we can divine by conscience and build toward. Each generation needs a faith such as this. This faith for me comes in part from seeing how what my parents' and grandparents' generations did makes a difference in my life. They are the butterflies in Teresa Soto's reading that we heard earlier. The flap of their wings had an immeasurable effect on the system and forever changed things. But we too, today, are the butterflies. What we do now, or what we don't do now, will make a difference for our children's and grandchildren's generations. Unitarian Universalist leader Paula Cole-Jones calls this being shoulder ready. Ready, grounded, and strong so that others can come after and metaphorically stand on our shoulders, building on the foundation that we've established. This is how, from generation to generation, we move toward the world that we dream of. Whatever your dream is, whatever you believe in, hold it close. Hold close all that you love. Because what you love, not what you hate or want to change, is what will give you the hope and the power and the determination to keep on. I'm guessing that most of you showed up to church this morning, whether you're here in the pews or online, because you didn't want to be alone. You want to live life, experience the holy, learn and grow and dream with others. This is a good place to be when you are grappling with how to keep on keeping on. Whatever it is that you're trying to keep on toward. We come together as a community, as Soto says, to dream a dream that carries forward our community. This is how we rise. So all rise for love, friends. May it be so again and again and again and again through the generations. Amen.